If there's one thing that fascinates us, it's the classic story of the unlikely hero who has to save the day. We see it all the time in movies, and we love it. Just think of Luke Skywalker in Star Wars, or Neo discovering the truth in The Matrix. We're drawn to this idea because it proves that even the smallest, most ordinary person can make the biggest difference when it matters most. But when it comes to the pinnacle of fantasy, the true father of all these epic tales, one name sits firmly on the throne: The Lord of the Rings. A massive trilogy that defined an entire generation in the 2000s, made us dream of living in the Shire, and swept awards all across the globe. Yet, revisiting these three films today, something clicks. This story isn't just about ancient wizards, colossal battles, or flawless-haired elves. At its core, it's a visceral tale about the crushing weight of responsibility and how far you'd go for your best friend. There's a lot of heart, but also losses that leave lasting scars. So today, The Lord of the Rings, the ultimate fantasy and proof that sometimes the greatest hero is the one who carries the hero. Long before any hobbits set their hairy feet out the door, Middle-earth was already plunged into war. In the Second Age, 20 rings of power were forged to govern the free peoples, 3 for the elves, 7 for the dwarf lords, and 9 for the kings of men. It seemed like a good plan, seemed, because in the shadows, Sauron, the Dark Lord, forged in secret a master ring of his own. In the fires of Mount Doom, one ring to rule them all. With it, he enslaved the 9 kings, who were transformed into the Nazgul, wraiths devoid of their own will. His armies advanced, sweeping across the free lands of Middle-earth as easily as eating breakfast. In the year 3434 of the Second Age, the last alliance of elves and men marched upon the slopes of Mount Doom to face Mordor head-on. Victory was almost within reach when Sauron himself appeared, wearing the ring. He struck down the elven king Gil-galad and the king of men, Elendil, as if they were paper dolls. Elendil's son, Isildur, took up his father's shattered sword, and in the exact moment Sauron was about to incinerate him with his touch, severed the Dark Lord's fingers. The ring was separated from him. Sauron fell, but Isildur did not destroy the ring, and because of that, Sauron's spirit survived. Isildur carried the ring with him until he was ambushed at the Gladden Fields. Desperate, he put the ring on to turn invisible and fled into the river, but the ring, treacherous as always, slipped from his finger, betraying his location to the orc archers. Isildur died right then and there, and the Second Age came to a close with the ring sinking to the riverbed. For 2,500 years, the ring lay forgotten in the depths of those dark waters, until someone found it, and it passed from hand to hand until it reached Gollum, a creature who took it deep into the tunnels of the Misty Mountains. The ring granted Gollum an unnatural lifespan of 500 years, trapped in the dark, obsessed with his precious. When Sauron resurfaced in Dol Guldur, the ring sensed its master's presence. It wanted to return to him. It slipped off Gollum's finger, hoping to be picked up by a goblin. But the one who found it was Bilbo Baggins, a hobbit from the Shire. And just like that, quite by accident, Bilbo brought the most dangerous object in Middle-earth into his cozy little home. 60 years later, Bilbo is rewriting the book about his adventures. He describes hobbits as peaceful creatures, largely forgotten by the world of men. He notes that there has always been, and always will be, a Baggins living at Bag End. A knock at the door interrupts his writing, and he realizes his nephew Frodo has left early for the East Woods, waiting for the arrival of the wizard Gandalf, and the wizard, as usual, is late. Frodo sits leaning against a tree to read when he hears singing approaching. Gandalf arrives in a cart, and the two greet each other like old friends. On the way back to Hobbiton, Frodo mentions that Bilbo has been acting strangely, poring over maps, especially one of Gondor, and locking himself in his study, writing endlessly. Meanwhile, Bilbo himself is at home frantically searching for the ring until he finds it in his waistcoat pocket. Frodo realizes Gandalf knows something about Bilbo's plans. He takes the chance to remind him that before the wizard took Bilbo on an adventure, the Baggins family was highly respected. Now Gandalf is seen as a disturber of the peace. The wizard notices the sideways glares from the older hobbits, but the children are still thrilled by his fireworks. He sets off a few from the cart for them and continues on to Bag End. Bilbo opens the door quite irritated, but when he sees it's Gandalf, his mood shifts entirely. He offers wine, scurrying all over the house while the wizard bumps his head on the ceiling beams. Gandalf spots the map of the Lonely Mountain and sits down with Bilbo for tea. The two discuss the plan until Lobelia Sackville Baggins knocks on the door, sending Bilbo into a panic. He reveals that he intends to leave for good, leaving Bag End to Frodo. He says he feels stretched too thin, like butter scraped over too much bread. Later, the two old friends sit outside smoking. Bilbo blows a smoke ring, and Gandalf magically blows a little ship that sails right through it. Bilbo's birthday party begins. Frodo pushes his best friend and gardener, Samwise Gamgee, to ask his crush, Rosie Cotton, for a dance. While Gandalf sets off fireworks for the children, Frodo's younger cousins, Merry Brandybuck and Pippin Took, steal one of the wizard's rockets. Bilbo and Frodo spend the whole party dodging the Sackville Bagginses. Bilbo tries to tell his nephew about his plan, but ends up just saying that Frodo will be alright. Merry and Pippin light the stolen firework, which explodes into the shape of Smaug, terrifying the guests, before bursting into brilliant lights over Hobbiton. Bilbo gets up to give his speech, stammers, fumbles for the ring in his pocket, and finally announces he is leaving. He puts the ring on and vanishes in front of everyone. He heads back to Bag End, but Gandalf is already there waiting. While packing his things, leaving almost everything to Frodo, Gandalf asks if he is going to leave the ring behind. Bilbo says he left it on the mantelpiece, but strangely finds it back in his pocket, stroking it. Gandalf insists he leave the ring behind, and Bilbo explodes in anger. He calls the ring "my precious," exactly as Gollum did, and Gandalf is alarmed. He uses his power to intimidate the Hobbit, who finally backs down. Even so, he almost leaves with the ring before Gandalf convinces him to drop it on the floor. Once out the door, Bilbo breathes a sigh of relief. He's already thought of an ending for his book, and he lived happily ever after, to the end of his days. He sets off toward Erebor. Gandalf reaches out for the ring but feels the evil radiating from it. He sits by the fire, deeply troubled, until Frodo arrives looking for Bilbo. Remembering that he talked so much about leaving, Frodo picks the ring up off the floor and hands it to Gandalf. The wizard places the ring in an envelope and tells Frodo to keep it secret and keep it safe. Then he leaves in a hurry. In Mordor, Sauron's orcs are rebuilding the fortress of Barad-dûr. Gollum, captured and tortured, screams two words: Shire and Baggins. The ring wraiths ride out from Minas Morgul. Gandalf arrives in Gondor and sees Mordor stirring back to life. Mount Doom is spewing fire. In Minas Tirith, he scours the scrolls in the library until he finds Isildur's account, how the ring would change size, how it affected its bearer, and the inscription that only appeared with fire. Sometime later, the Nazgul arrive in the borders of the Shire asking for Baggins. Farmer Maggot points them toward Hobbiton. Meanwhile, Frodo and Sam are at the Green Dragon, listening to rumors about dwarves crossing the Shire and wars brewing in the mountains. Frodo returns to Bag End and senses someone has been there. Gandalf appears from behind in a panic. Is it secret? Is it safe? He grabs the ring, throws it into the fire, and reveals the inscription. It is the One Ring.
In the common tongue, it says, "One ring to rule them all. One ring to find them. One."
It was with Bilbo for 60 years while evil was stirring once again in Mordor. Frodo wants to hide it, but Gandalf shatters that illusion. Gollum knew Bilbo had the ring, was found by Sauron, and tortured. He revealed two words: Shire and Baggins. The wraiths are already on their way. Frodo begs Gandalf to take the ring, but the wizard refuses. If the ring were to corrupt him, all his power would be at the service of evil. Frodo decides to take the ring out of the Shire. Gandalf needs to go speak with Saruman and tells Frodo to head for Bree using a false name. A rustle in the bushes startles them both, but it's only Sam, who had been eavesdropping on something about a dark lord and the end of the world. Gandalf forces Sam to go with Frodo. He warns them to be careful of spies, and above all, to never put the ring on. It draws the servants of Sauron. The two hobbits cross the southern reaches of the Shire. At a certain point, Sam stops and says it's the furthest from home he's ever been. Frodo encourages him by quoting Bilbo, and later they spot wood elves leaving Middle-earth for the Grey Havens. They make camp in the Green Hill country. Sam can't sleep out in the open and stays up eating, keeping Frodo awake. In the distance, a Nazgul surveys the landscape, searching for them. Gandalf rides to Isengard to seek Saruman's counsel. He tells him the ring has been in the Shire right under their noses. Saruman grows irritated, blaming Gandalf's love for the halfling's leaf. Gandalf says there is still time, but Saruman disagrees. Sauron has regained much of his former strength. His eye watches from Barad-dûr, searching for the ring. An attack on Middle-earth is imminent. Gandalf is troubled by how much Saruman knows, and the older wizard reveals the Palantir, a seeing stone. Gandalf warns that it is dangerous, and upon briefly touching it, he sees the Eye of Sauron. Saruman reveals that the Nine have already been sent to the Shire, disguised as Black Riders. Gandalf tries to leave to find Frodo, but Saruman locks the doors. He confesses that no one can withstand the power of Sauron, and that they should join him. A fight ensues. Gandalf is defeated. In Bamfurlong, Sam nearly loses Frodo in a cornfield. When he finds him, he says Gandalf made him promise never to lose sight of his master. Just then, Merry and Pippin crash into them, carrying stolen crops from Farmer Maggot, whose scythe can be seen swinging in the field behind them. The four hobbits run, tumble down a hill, and land on the road in the woody end, where they find mushrooms. Amidst the scramble for the mushrooms, Frodo senses danger and tells everyone to hide off the road. A Black Rider appears, sniffing the air almost directly above them. Frodo is tempted to put the ring on, but Sam stops him and throws a sack of vegetables across the road to distract their pursuer. They flee. That night, Merry deduces the rider was looking for something, or someone. He looks pointedly at Frodo. The hobbit explains he needs to reach Bree. Merry guides them to the Buckleberry Ferry. Along the way, Frodo is nearly caught by a rider, but his friends are already pushing the ferry off. He leaps at the last second, with the rider right on his heels. Separated by the water, the rider turns back, and four more join him, riding toward the Brandywine Bridge. Emerging from the woods, the hobbits arrive at the gates of Bree. Harry, the gatekeeper, finds it odd to see Shire hobbits and demands to know what business brings them there. Frodo insists it is private. The gatekeeper lets them in, but warns that these are strange times. At the Prancing Pony, Frodo introduces himself as Underhill and asks for Gandalf. The innkeeper says he hasn't seen the wizard in 6 months. The hobbits sit and wait until Sam notices a hooded man watching them from the corner. Butterbur says he is one of the rangers, dangerous folk who roam the wild lands. They call him Strider. Frodo fumbles with the ring in his nervousness. Pippin, drunk, answers questions about someone looking for Baggins and points to Frodo. When Frodo rushes over to shut him up, he trips. The ring slips perfectly onto his finger, and he vanishes in front of everyone. The Ringwraith sense his presence and ride for Bree. Frodo has a vision of the Eye. When he reappears, Strider drags him into a room. He warns him to be more careful with what he carries. Frodo denies it, but Strider says he knows what is hunting them. The other hobbits burst into the room, ready for a fight. The wraiths smash through the gates of Bree, break into the inn, and stab the hobbits' beds, which have been stuffed with pillows. Frodo, Sam, Merry, and Pippin are sleeping in a different room with Strider keeping watch. He explains that the wraiths were once kings of men who, blinded by greed, accepted Sauron's 9 rings and became immortal slaves to his dark will. The next morning, Strider leads them through the wild toward Rivendell, while the Nazgul also ride out of Bree. They cross the Midgewater marshes. Strider hunts for food, and when Pippin complains about not getting second breakfast, catches an apple tossed from afar. At night, Strider sings a somber verse from the Lay of Luthien. Meanwhile, Saruman contacts Sauron, who orders the creation of an army. Saruman begins tearing down the trees of his gardens. Gandalf, imprisoned atop the Tower of Orthanc, watches helplessly. Strider leads the hobbits to Weathertop, where they make camp. The hobbits light a fire to cook food, which alerts the wraiths. 5 Nazgul ascend the hill. Frodo puts on the ring and sees the Witch King of Angmar in his true form. He refuses to hand over the ring and is stabbed with a Morgul blade. Strider leaps in with torches, drives the wraiths away, and identifies the blade, which dissolves into smoke in his hand. He picks Frodo up, stating he needs elvish medicine. Atop Orthanc, a moth lands on Gandalf. He sends it to fetch Gwaihir. Below, Isengard has become an industrial fortress. Pits are dug, trees feed the furnaces, and weapons are forged. Uruk-hai, a crossbreed of orcs and men, are born from the underground slime. One of them, Lurtz, stands out above the rest. Frodo is laid down in the Trollshaws, where Sam tries to cheer him up by pointing out the 3 stone trolls. Strider explains that Frodo is slowly passing into the Wraith world. He leaves with Sam to search for Kingsfoil, an herb that slows the poison. Upon finding it, he is caught off guard by a sword at his throat. It is Arwen, an elven maiden. She and Strider place Frodo onto her horse. Arwen says 5 of the 9 wraiths are right behind them, but if she can cross the river, the power of her people will protect her. Strider lets her go, staying behind with the other hobbits. Arwen rides through the Ettenmoors and Rudar with the wraiths in hot pursuit. Barely making it across the river, the nine gather on the far bank, demanding the halfling. When they begin to cross, Arwen summons the waters of the river. A massive flood, its white crests taking the shape of galloping horses, sweeps the wraiths away. But Frodo is dying. Arwen prays over him as he is taken to Rivendell. Frodo wakes up and finds Gandalf. The wizard apologizes for his delay. A flashback shows his escape from Orthanc on the back of a giant eagle. Frodo meets Elrond, explores Rivendell, reunites with his friends, and finds an aged Bilbo. The older hobbit shows him the completed Red Book and says he had meant to return to Erebor, but age suddenly caught up with him. Gandalf and Elrond converse. The ring cannot stay in Rivendell. Envoys from various peoples arrive at Elrond's summons. Gimli and Gloin from the Lonely Mountain, men of Dale, Boromir of Gondor, and Legolas of the Woodland Realm. Elrond reveals that the elves are leaving, and that the dwarves will be of no help. Gandalf suggests men, but Elrond holds a deep resentment. He recounts how Isildur refused to destroy the ring when he had the chance. He says the line of kings is broken, and the world of men is scattered. Gandalf mentions there is one who could unite them by reclaiming the throne of Gondor. Elrond replies that this man turned away from that path a long time ago. Strider is reading in a corner when Boromir enters and looks at the mural of Isildur. The two interact cordially. Boromir finds the shards of Narsil, Isildur's sword. He picks up the hilt, runs his fingers along the broken blade, and cuts himself. He drops it, remarking that it is no more than a broken heirloom.
No more than a broken heirloom.
Strider reverently picks up the shard and sets it back in place. Arwen appears and tells him he is Isildur's heir, not Isildur himself. Strider confesses his fear of falling to the same weakness, but Arwen assures him he will overcome it. That night, the two reminisce about their first meeting. Arwen gives him the Evenstar and promises to live a mortal life by his side. At the Council of Elrond, Frodo presents the ring. Boromir speaks of a dream that Isildur's bane has been found, and he nearly touches the ring. Gandalf recites the inscription in the Black Speech, and a shadow falls over Rivendell. Boromir wants to use the ring as a weapon against Sauron. He argues that his father, the Steward, pays in blood to keep Mordor at bay from the other lands. Strider explains that the ring answers to Sauron alone, but Boromir dismisses him as a mere ranger. Legolas, angered, reveals that this man is no mere ranger. He is Aragorn, son of Arathorn, heir to the throne of Gondor. Boromir is shocked but claims that Gondor has no need of a king. Elrond declares that the ring must be destroyed. Gimli tries to smash it with his axe. It doesn't work. Elrond explains that only the fires of Mount Doom can unmake it. Therefore, someone must take the ring into Mordor. Boromir calls it folly. An argument erupts. Frodo stands up and says he will take the ring. A heavy silence follows. Gandalf stands beside him. Then Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, and finally, Boromir. Sam emerges from hiding, declaring that Mr. Frodo's not going anywhere without me. Merry and Pippin show up as well. The Fellowship of the Ring is formed. On the morning of their departure, Aragorn visits the grave of his mother. Elrond says she believed he would be safe in Rivendell, knowing he would be hunted his whole life and could never escape his destiny. Even so, Aragorn refuses to wield Narsil and claim the crown. Frodo receives Sting and the mithril shirt from Bilbo. Upon seeing the ring hanging from Frodo's neck as he puts on the shirt, Bilbo lunges for it for a split second, looking like a wretched creature. Then he apologizes, terrified by his own behavior. Elrond bids farewell to the Fellowship. Arwen watches Aragorn from afar. Frodo, at the head of the group, asks Gandalf if Mordor is left or right. Bearing left, they leave Rivendell and enter Hollin, passing the ruins of Osten Edel. They make camp with a view of the Misty Mountains. Gandalf outlines the plan. Head south along the mountains for 40 days, reach the Gap of Rohan, and then turn east. Boromir teaches Merry and Pippin how to fight with swords. Gimli suggests crossing the mountains through the mines of Moria, where his cousin Balin established a colony, but Gandalf refuses. A rapidly approaching cloud turns out to be the Crabine from Dunland, Saruman's spies. Gandalf concludes that Isengard blocks the southern passage. They must climb the pass of Caradhras. On the snowy ascent, Frodo falls, and the ring rolls into the snow. Boromir picks it up. He stands transfixed, holding the ring for a moment too long before Aragorn orders him to give it back. Saruman discovers their route and uses magic to bring down a devastating blizzard upon the mountain. Gandalf tries to fight back with his own will, but Saruman prevails. The group is nearly buried alive. They debate their next move. Frodo makes the decision. They will go through the mines. On the way, Gandalf shares a private moment with Frodo. He warns him that the ring's power is growing, and that it may draw evil from outside and from within the Fellowship. He tells Frodo to trust in himself. Gimli spots the walls of Moria. Gandalf finds the hidden door but cannot solve the riddle. Speak, friend, and enter. He sits down in frustration. Sam bids farewell to build a pony. Pippin throws stones into the lake until Aragorn stops him. Frodo figures it out. Say friend, and enter. The door opens. Inside, Balin's dwarves are all dead, slaughtered by goblins. Before they can flee, the Watcher in the water grabs Frodo. Aragorn and Boromir narrowly rescue him. The monster destroys the doorway behind them. Now there is no going back. It is a 6-day journey through Moria. The company presses through the mines, marveling at the mithril veins and immense caverns. They stop at a 3-way crossroad that Gandalf does not recognize. While he ponders, Frodo spots a creature behind them. Gandalf says it is Gollum, who has been following them for 3 days, drawn by the ring. He explains that Gollum hates and loves the ring, as he hates and loves himself. Frodo says he wishes Bilbo had killed the creature, but Gandalf gently rebukes him. Bilbo's pity may yet rule the fate of many. Frodo laments that the ring ever came to him. Gandalf replies that Bilbo was meant to find the ring, and therefore it was meant for Frodo to have it. He chooses the downward passage, noting that the air doesn't smell so foul down here. They enter the 21st hall. Gandalf illuminates the vast, empty space. Gimli finds the chamber of Mazarbul, where the tomb of Balin, son of Fundin, Lord of Moria, lies. Beside Ori's body, they find a ledger with the colony's final records. Orcs had trapped them in that very chamber. Drums in the deep, and a shadow. Pippin accidentally bumps a skeleton that tumbles down a well, the noise echoing through the caverns. Drums begin to beat. Orcs arrive along with a cave troll. The battle is brutal. The troll tosses Boromir aside, knocks Gimli down, and impales Frodo with a spear. Merry and Pippin jump onto the troll's back, and Legolas fires an arrow into its mouth. Frodo survives thanks to his mithril shirt. The company flees through the hall but is soon surrounded by orcs, until a terrifying roar makes all their enemies retreat in fear. Gandalf identifies it, a Balrog, a demon of shadow and flame. They sprint down the stairs, leap over chasms, and dodge arrows. The Balrog causes cave-ins behind them, and Aragorn uses Frodo's weight to tip a broken stairway forward, allowing the two of them to leap to safety. At the bridge of Khazad-dûm, Gandalf stands against the Balrog. Alone on the narrow bridge, he unleashes the full might of his magic. The span of the bridge beneath the Balrog crumbles, and the beast falls into the abyss. But at the very last second, the Balrog's fiery whip wraps around the wizard's ankle, and Gandalf falls. The Fellowship flees through the Dimril Gate. They weep for their loss. Aragorn forces them to keep moving. By nightfall, these hills will be swarming with orcs. They press on until they sight the woods of Lothlorien. Deep within the forest, Gimli warns them of the elf witch who lives there. Galadriel contacts Frodo telepathically. You bring great evil here, Ringbearer. They are intercepted by elves led by Haldir, who denies them entry. Aragorn negotiates, while Boromir tells Frodo not to carry the weight of the dead. Haldir finally guides them to Caras Galad Hon. Galadriel and Celeborn welcome them. Celeborn notes Gandalf's absence. Galadriel states that he has fallen into shadow. She offers words of comfort to Gimli. Her gaze pierces Boromir, who breaks down in tears. Frodo is contacted by her once again as one who has seen the eye. At night, Frodo follows Galadriel to her mirror, a silver basin of water that reveals visions. He sees his friends, then the Shire. Suddenly, the Shire is in flames. Orcs enslaving hobbits, everything laid to waste. The vision shifts into the eye of Sauron. Galadriel reveals that this is what will come to pass if you should fail. The Fellowship is breaking. Frodo offers the ring to Galadriel. For a fleeting moment, she appears in her terrible, powerful form, but ultimately refuses it. She chooses to diminish and go into the west. Frodo asks for guidance. Galadriel reveals her own ring and explains the burden of the bearer. It is a task he alone can do. Yet, she also encourages Frodo. Even the smallest person can change the course of the future. Saruman outfits Lurtz, his chief Uruk-hai. He tells him how the orcs were bred from mutilated elves, a ruined form of life that he has now perfected. He dispatches a company led by Lurtz to hunt down the Fellowship as they leave Lorien. His orders are clear. Bring the halflings alive. The Fellowship departs Lorien with elven cloaks, boats, and gifts. Daggers for Merry and Pippin, elven rope for Sam, a bow for Legolas. Gimli, now now utterly captivated by Galadriel, asks for a single strand of her hair as his gift. She gives him 3. Galadriel gifts Frodo the file containing the Light of Arendelle. She speaks with Aragorn about the Evenstar and tells him he must rise above all his forefathers since the days of Elendil. She bids him farewell, stating they shall not meet again. As they travel down the river, the Uruk-hai track them by land. Boromir spots Gollum still trailing them, paddling on a floating log. He wants to take the Fellowship to Gondor, but Aragorn insists on going straight to Mordor. Boromir grows furious, accusing Aragorn of hiding in the shadows. Frodo overhears everything, growing increasingly anxious. Sam tries to comfort him, but is turned away. The company reaches the Argonath, 2 towering pillars carved into the likenesses of Isildur and Elendil, guarding the ancient border of Gondor. They pass between them and arrive at Parth Galen. Aragorn announces they will cross the river at nightfall and proceed on foot to Mordor. Merry notices that Frodo has vanished, and Boromir as well. Frodo is climbing the hill when he comes across Boromir gathering firewood. Boromir says he understands Frodo's suffering and suggests going to Minas Tirith. Frodo refuses. Boromir's mask slips. He wants the ring. Frodo denies him. Boromir lunges, nearly taking the ring by force. Frodo puts it on to disappear. He strikes Boromir, who comes to his senses and begs for forgiveness. But Frodo has already sprinted up the hill, where he sees Barad-dûr and the Eye. He takes off the ring. He is at Amon Hen. Aragorn appears and asks about the ring. Frodo, terrified, backs away. Aragorn is tempted, but resists. He points to Frodo's sword glowing blue. Orcs are close. Frodo runs. Aragorn faces Lurtz's Uruk-hai. Gimli and Legolas join the fray. Frodo hides behind a tree. Merry and Pippin are hiding on the other side. Merry realizes Frodo's intention. He is leaving on his own. Pippin stands up to stop him, making himself visible to the orcs. The two decide to act as bait so Frodo can escape. They are cornered until Boromir charges in to fight for them. Surrounded by overwhelming numbers, he blows his horn. Lurtz appears and shoots Boromir with 4 arrows. Merry and Pippin are captured. Lurtz approaches to deliver the final blow, but Aragorn intervenes. After a fierce fight, he defeats the Uruk. He rushes to Boromir, who dies in his arms asking for forgiveness. Aragorn promises to protect the people of Gondor. Frodo makes his way to the riverbank, ready to set out alone, strengthened by Gandalf's words. But Sam refuses to be left behind, wading into the water after him despite not knowing how to swim. Frodo pulls him into the boat. On the other shore, Aragorn decides to hunt the orcs to save Merry and Pippin. Frodo and Sam look toward the road ahead. Frodo says how glad he is to have Sam by his side, and he trusts that Aragorn will look after the others. The Fellowship has broken, but the journey is far from over. Gandalf is falling. The abyss of the mines of Moria swallows him and the Balrog in a drop that seems endless. But the wizard isn't going down empty-handed. As he plummets, he retrieves his sword and goes after the creature. The two trade blow after blow in freefall until they crash through the surface of a massive subterranean lake deep beneath the earth. And then Frodo wakes up. Sam checks on his friend, concerned. Frodo says it was just a dream, but we know it wasn't. We saw it. The two hobbits are now crossing Emyn Muil, a maze of jagged rocks and mist that feels more like a geographical nightmare. Using the elven rope, they scale down a fog-covered cliff face. Sam drops an object and Frodo tries to catch it, causing him to slip and vanish into the mist. Our hearts skip a beat for a second until we realize the ground was right there below, hidden by the fog. Sam climbs down and reveals what that precious object was: a box of seasoning. Frodo laughs. For the first time in a long while, the two think of home. Frodo, ever mindful of the threat of Gollum, doesn't want to leave the rope behind. He doesn't want to leave a trail for anyone to follow. Sam gives the rope a tug, and it comes loose almost by magic, uncoiling completely. From a high vantage point, they spot Mordor in the distance. The ring grows heavier the closer it gets to its maker, and Frodo has a vision of the flaming eye. Sam tries to cheer him up by reminding him of their generous stash of Lemba's bread. But the rain starts pouring. They take shelter under a rock, and there, in the silence, Frodo hears something. Gollum is close, watching, waiting. The two hobbits wander through the treacherous terrain, lost in the mist, until Frodo states the obvious. They're walking in circles. Sam smells the dead marshes. Frodo warns him that they are not alone. At night, while they pretend to sleep, Gollum appears, creeping through the dark, muttering about thieves. He closes in. Just as he reaches for the ring, the two hobbits spring up. It was a trap. Gollum nearly grabs the ring, but Sam holds him back. The creature fights back, trying to strangle Sam until Frodo presses Sting against his throat. Gollum begins to weep. His sobs echo through the rocks of Emyn Muil as Gollum is dragged along by the elven rope, which burns his skin. Frodo feels pity. Gollum, desperate, swears to serve the hobbits, swearing by the precious. Frodo knows Gollum has been captured in Mordor before and knows the way. He orders him to lead them to the Black Gate. Gollum scampers ahead, talking to himself, torn between his fear of returning to Mordor and his obedience to his new master. He vanishes for a moment but reappears, guiding the hobbits to the edge of Emyn Muil. For now, he cooperates. Meanwhile, far away, the Uruk-hai who captured Merry and Pippin are carrying the hobbits across the Eastamnet of Rohan. Merry looks hurt, out of commission. Orcs of Mordor, led by Grishnok, join the group and want to take the hobbits to Sauron. Ugluk, the leader of the Uruks, refuses. Pippin asks for water for his friend, but Ugluk forces an orc draft down Merry's throat. Merry, by the way, was faking being in worse shape than he actually was. Good one, Merry. An Uruk scout sniffs the air and catches Aragorn's scent. Ugluk confirms it. They are being followed. They start running. In the rush, Pippin uses his teeth to rip the leaf of Lorien off his cloak and drops it on the ground. A trail, a sign of hope. Aragorn is lying on the ground, ear pressed to the earth, picking up the vibrations of distant footsteps. He gets up and takes off running, with Legolas right behind him, and Gimli panting in the rear, complaining that dwarves weren't made for cross-country running. Aragorn finds the leaf and deduces the hobbits are less than a day ahead, and that they are probably alive. On the plains of Rohan, Aragorn senses that some dark force is speeding up the Uruks, while simultaneously slowing down their pursuers. Legolas, with his elven eyes, sees the Uruks changing direction. They are heading for Isengard, and in Isengard, Saruman converses with Sauron through the Palantir. He asks, rhetorically, who has the power to stand against the union of the two towers? Orthanc and Barad-dûr. His Uruks chop down trees relentlessly, feeding the furnaces that are churning out his army. To have everything ready in 2 weeks, they dam the river Isen and devastate a large chunk of Fangorn forest. Saruman forges an alliance with the Dunlendings, who attack the Westfold of Rohan. In a village, a mother puts her 2 children on a horse and tells them to ride to Edoras to raise the alarm. Meanwhile, a Rohan army is defeated by the Uruk-hai at the Battle of the Fords of Isen. Eomer arrives and finds his cousin Thedred, the king's son, wounded but alive. They take him to Edoras, where Princess Eowyn tends to his injuries. King Theoden looks old, frail, a shadow of a leader, and right beside him, like a pet snake, is Grima Wormtongue, the counselor who controls the king like a puppet. Eomer presents an Uruk helmet bearing the white hand of Saruman, but Grima insists Saruman is an ally.
Saruman the White has ever been our friend and ally.
Grima, who has a sick obsession with Eowyn, is secretly working for Saruman. Shortly after, he has the king sign a decree banishing Eomer from Rohan. Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli stay on the trail. The Uruks finally stop to rest at the edge of Fangorn Forest and start chopping down trees for firewood. Strange sounds echo from the woods, and Merry realizes it's the trees. He cites the old forest as an example of a place where trees come alive. The Uruks are starving. The orcs want to eat the hobbits. Ugluk forbids it, claiming they carry something, an elvish weapon that Saruman wants. One of the orcs lunges at the hobbits anyway. Ugluk solves the problem by decapitating the insubordinate orc, and his body becomes a meal for the rest. Merry and Pippin try to escape in the chaos, but Grishnok catches them. At that exact moment, the riders of Rohan hit them like an avalanche. A spear pierces Grishnok's back. Orcs and Uruks are slaughtered, and Pippin appears to be trampled in the frenzy. Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli run into the riders, who surround them with spears. Eomer steps forward, suspicious, thinking they are Saruman's spies. Things almost get ugly for Gimli, who provokes him, but Legolas defends his friend. Eomer explains the situation. Saruman has poisoned the king's mind, and he and his men have been banished. He says they slaughtered the Uruks and burned the bodies. No one survived. He lends them horses to go look for their friends. At the pyre, Gimli finds a belt from Lorien among the remains. Aragorn kicks a helmet in frustration, but as he drops to the ground, he notices crawl marks. He analyzes the terrain and reconstructs what happened. The hobbits survived, cut their bonds on a dropped blade, ran, and were chased by the wounded Grishnok. The orc grabbed Merry's belt, and Merry had to undo it to keep running. They ended up inside Fangorn Forest. Inside the forest, the hobbits are still being hunted by Grishnok. They climb a tree, but the orc grabs Merry's leg. Pippin yells from above, and the tree moves. It's not a tree. It's a living creature, with legs, that crushes the orc like a bug. He picks Merry up and examines them both, calling them little orcs. He introduces himself as an Ent, a shepherd of the forest. His name is Treebeard. He is on nobody's side, but everybody hates orcs. Having never heard of hobbits, he decides to take them to the White Wizard. Back to Frodo and Sam, Gollum has successfully guided them out of the mountains and into the dead marshes. He knows a path the orcs don't use. While camped, Gollum is starving. The best he can find is a worm, which he eats right in front of Sam while the hobbit tries to eat lembas. Frodo offers Gollum a piece of the elven bread, but the effect is violent. The elven food practically poisons him, which, oddly enough, brings Sam's appetite right back. Gollum latches onto Frodo, saying he knows what it's like to carry the burden of the ring. Frodo, however, doesn't want Gollum touching him. Continuing their journey, Sam sees dead faces in the water of the marshes, warriors of the Last Alliance preserved there for centuries. Frodo is mesmerized by the face of an elf and falls into the water. The spirit of the elf reaches out to grab him before Gollum pulls him back out. That night, Frodo is stroking the ring when he hears Gollum muttering to himself. He confronts the creature, saying Gandalf told him he was once somewhat like a hobbit. He speaks his true name, Smeagol. The creature savors the sound of his own name, as if he hadn't heard it in ages. But then, the screech of a Nazgul pierces the air. Frodo is paralyzed by the memory of the Morgul blade that nearly killed him. Sam drags him under a bush. The ringwraith appears riding a winged beast. Frodo almost puts on the ring, but Sam stops him. When the creature flies away, Gollum prepares to guide them to the Black Gate. In Fangorn Forest, Gimli, Aragorn, and Legolas find orc blood and strange tracks. Legolas hears the trees speaking to each other. Gimli is skeptical, but lowers his axe just in case. Legolas spots the White Wizard, and the three prepare to attack, but they are easily disarmed. The wizard asks about their quest and says the hobbits met someone unexpected, and then he reveals himself. It's Gandalf. Dressed in white now, he recounts how he chased the Balrog to Durin's tower at the peak of Tel Ebdil, where he defeated it with lightning and thunder, but suffered a mortal wound. His spirit wandered through the void, out of thought and time, and he was sent back until his task is done. Gandalf orders them to abandon the search for Merry and Pippin. Instead, they must go to Edoras and help heal Theoden for the coming war. Gimli protests, but Gandalf assures him the hobbits are safe and that they will wake the Ents and have them find that they are strong. At the edge of the forest, Gandalf calls his steed Shadowfax, and they ride past burning villages to the plains leading to Edoras. Treebeard, meanwhile, tries to entertain Merry and Pippin with his poetry as he takes them to his home. They fall asleep, and the Ent lays them down gently before heading out to gather the other Ents, lamenting the withering of all woods. At night, Gandalf reveals to Aragorn that Sauron knows the heir of Númenor still lives, and he will strike at the world of men through Saruman, who aims to destroy Rohan, weak and ready to fall. But the thought of them trying to destroy the ring has not yet entered the enemy's darkest dreams. Everything hinges on the secrecy of the quest. He says Frodo must complete the task alone. Aragorn points out that Sam went with him, and the wizard smiles, pleased. Sam and Frodo reach a vantage point overlooking the Black Gate, which is closed. Easterling soldiers approach, and the gate opens for them. Sam sees a chance to sneak in while the gate is open, but the rock he steps on crumbles. He falls, drawing the attention of two soldiers. Frodo rushes down to him, finds Sam stuck waist deep in the rubble, and throws the elven cloak over them both. The soldiers walk right past and see nothing. The gray cloak camouflaged them perfectly, making it look like nothing more than a piece of rock. Before they can move forward, Gollum stops them. He says they will be caught and the precious will be taken to Sauron. He offers another way, a more secret path, up some stairs and through a tunnel. Sam is highly suspicious, but Frodo agrees. In the morning, in the forest, Merry wakes up and notices something strange. Pippin has grown. He's taller than him. The Ent draft worked. Merry drinks some too, and when he tries to run off with it, they are both grabbed by Old Man Willow before Treebeard shows up and frees them. The Ent explains that the trees have grown wild and dangerous, and that there are few Ents left to manage them. They lost the Ent wives, and the forest was never the same. Gandalf leads Aragorn and company to Edoras. Fedred has just died. Éowyn is weeping over his body when Grima tries, and almost succeeds, to seduce her. She flees to the gate and stares out at the plains. The flag of Rohan tears loose in the wind and falls at Aragorn's feet as he rides into the city. A bleak, lifeless place. At the gates of the Golden Hall, the guard Hama, under Grima's orders, disarms them all. Gandalf holds onto his staff, claiming it's just an old man's walking stick. Inside, Grima taunts the wizard, who raises his staff. Grima's men attack but are quickly subdued by Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli. Gandalf casts Saruman out of Theoden's mind. The king is restored, regains his clarity, and grasps his sword. Theoden nearly has Grima killed, but Aragorn asks for mercy and extends a hand to help him up. Grima spits at this kindness, mounts a horse, and flees Edoras. Theoden learns of his son's death. The funeral is held. He places a white flower, a symbol mina, on the tomb. Soon after, the two kids arrive with their plea for help. Gandalf advises Theoden to ride out and meet Saruman in open war. Aragorn suggests calling Éomer back. Theoden dismisses it, saying the distance is too great. He decides to move his people to the stronghold of Helm's Deep. Gandalf disagrees. There is no way out of that ravine, and rides off to find reinforcements. Aragorn calms Brago, Theodred's horse. Éowyn is impressed by this elvish magic, and Aragorn explains he was raised in Rivendell. Meanwhile, Grima arrives at Isengard and tells Saruman about Gandalf's group. Saruman assumes the man was from Gondor, but Grima describes a Dunedain, a ranger, wearing a strange ring. Saruman figures it out. It is the heir of Isildur. Theoden prepares for the departure from Edoras. Éowyn is practicing her swordplay, and Aragorn blocks her strike with a dagger. She reveals that she doesn't fear battle or death, but rather being kept in a cage. Aragorn understands, and she notices it. The exodus from Edoras begins, and Grima from Isengard predicts their every move. He tells Saruman that the road at the foot of the White Mountains is dangerous. The people will be slow and vulnerable. Saruman sends his warg riders after them. In Ithilien, Sam taunts Gollum, and Frodo scolds him. The ring is slowly consuming Frodo, and he lashes out at Sam. At night, Gollum has a conversation with himself. The Smeagol side says the Master is his friend. The Gollum side sneers, reminding him he is a murderer. Smeagol tells Gollum to go away, leave now, and never come back. The next day, Smeagol, seemingly free of his dark half, brings 2 rabbits to Frodo as a gift. Sam stews them, and Smeagol protests. Frodo hears an artificial bird call and goes to investigate. A column of Haradrim is marching toward Mordor. Smeagol says they are being summoned to war. When they try to sneak away, Sam spots their beasts of burden, Oliphants. Just then, rangers of Gondor ambush the Haradrim from hidden positions. An Oliphant nearly crushes the hobbits, but the captain shoots it, and the beast veers off. The rangers capture the hobbits. Smeagol had already fled. The leader, while lamenting the senseless death in the wars of men, assumes the hobbits are spies. They are bound and blindfolded. On the march to Helm's Deep, Gimli amuses Éowyn with stories about how dwarf women look so similar to dwarf men that they are often confused for one another, leading people to believe dwarves just spring out of holes in the ground. Theoden quietly tells Aragorn that Éowyn was just a girl when her father was killed by orcs and her mother died of grief. He laments not loving her as a father should have. Éowyn makes some stew for Aragorn. It's hot, but visually questionable. Aragorn politely accepts, and the moment she turns her back, tries to dump it out. She turns back and mentions she heard he rode with Thengel, her grandfather, which would mean Aragorn is at least 60 years old. He confesses he is 87. She realizes he is one of the Dunedain, a descendant of Numenor. Aragorn confirms, saying he is one of the last remnants of the Old Kingdom. At night, Aragorn dreams of Arwen. He relives the night after the Council of Elrond when he shared his fears with her and she encouraged him to go with Frodo. Éowyn asks about the woman who gave him the Evenstar. He flashes back to the day of his departure, when Elrond asked him to let Arwen leave for Valinor and keep her immortality. Aragorn feigned breaking up with Arwen so she wouldn't throw away her eternal life. He tells Éowyn that Arwen is sailing to the Undying Lands. On the road, Hama and Gamling are riding at the head of the column when Hama's horse spooks. A warg scout kills Hama, Gamling kills the warg, and Legolas kills the orc. Aragorn alerts the column, and Theoden rallies his men. He orders Éowyn to lead the people to Helm's Deep, while he and the warriors face the threat. In the battle, Gimli and Legolas start a kill count rivalry. Legolas takes the lead with 17 to Gimli's 2. Aragorn gets tackled by a warg, and in the struggle they both tumble off a cliff. In the aftermath of the skirmish, a dying orc claims Aragorn is dead and shows the Evenstar as proof. Theoden orders them to move on. Legolas and Gimli ride with him, devastated. Éowyn leads the women and children until they spot Helm's Deep. When Theoden arrives with only a few warriors, she asks Gimli about Aragorn. The news crushes her. Theoden inspects the defenses, missing the weakness created by the culvert of the Deeping Stream. Grima points this out to Saruman, who pours black powder into metal vessels and pushes Grima's candle away from the volatile material. Grima remarks it would take thousands to breach the walls. Then he sees Saruman's massive army. As Saruman gives the order to leave none alive, Grima sheds a tear for what he has helped create. From high up in Fangorn, Merry and Pippin watch this army march out. Aragorn, still alive, washes up on the riverbank. Brago finds him. He mounts the horse and rides. In Rivendell, Elrond Elrond confronts Arwen, urging her to leave for Valinor. When she refuses, he shows her a vision. Even if Sauron is defeated and Aragorn is crowned king, he will still die one day, and Arwen will be left alone, consumed by grief for all eternity. Terrified by the vision, she agrees to leave. As Arwen departs, Elrond speaks telepathically with Galadriel, who summarizes the dire situation. The enemy's power is growing. Saruman seeks to destroy Rohan. Sauron's eye turns to Gondor. The ring-bearer's strength is failing, and if the young captain of Gondor claims the ring, the world will fall. She urges Elrond to send help to the Rohirrim. The captain of Gondor, Faramir, receives a report from Modril. He learns of the retreat to Helm's Deep and that Sauron is also gathering his forces. 500 men were pulled from Osgiliath to guard the northern river crossing, leaving the city vulnerable. Frodo and Sam are in the Rangers' hideout at a cave behind a waterfall. Denying they are spies, Frodo introduces himself and speaks of his companions. 7 in total, 1 lost in Moria, 2 kinsmen, a dwarf, an elf, and 2 men, Aragorn and Boromir.
2 were my kin. A dwarf there was also, and an elf, and 2 men. Aragorn, son of Arathorn, and Boromir of Gondor.
Hearing his brother's name, Faramir reveals that Boromir is dead, his cloven horn washed up on the riverbank 2 days prior. Faramir had a vision of his brother's body drifting down the river in a boat. Boromir was Faramir's brother. At night, holding the cloven horn, Faramir remembers how Boromir led them to victory at the Battle of Osgiliath. Their father, Denethor, arrived later, scolded Faramir for losing the city in the first place, and pulled Boromir aside to talk about the Council of Elrond. Word was that the One Ring had been found, and Denethor ordered Boromir to bring it to Gondor. Modril wakes Faramir. They found Gollum. He takes Frodo to the Forbidden Pool, where Gollum is fishing, unaware of the archers aiming right at him. Trespassing in the pool is punishable by death. Frodo goes down and tricks Gollum into coming to safety, but Faramir's men ambush and rough him up. Smeagol feels betrayed by Frodo, and Gollum takes control again. Faramir interrupts the internal struggle, asking what was stolen from him. The answer, my precious. Sam suggests Frodo put on the ring and escape. Frodo confesses he can't. The ring is taking over his mind. Faramir walks in, having confirmed the ring's existence, and almost takes it from Frodo. Sam blurts out that they are heading to Mordor to destroy it in Mount Doom. Modril arrives with news of an attack on Osgiliath. Faramir rallies his men and orders them to bring the hobbits along. The ring will go to Gondor. Aragorn arrives at Helm's Deep ahead of the enemy army. Gimli welcomes him. Éowyn watches him in silent relief, and Legolas returns the Evan Star to him. Aragorn informs the king. 10,000 Uruks are approaching, a number far beyond what Théoden imagined. The king tries to boost his men's morale, talking of a heroic final stand. Aragorn suggests calling for aid. Théoden scoffs. Who would come? Elves? Men? Gondor? He harbors deep resentment toward Gondor for not showing up when the Westfold fell. Treebeard carries the hobbits to Durndingle for the Ent Moot. Other Ents arrive to decide whether they will go to war. At Helm's Deep, Aragorn helps prep the defenses. Éowyn protests being sent down into the caves. Aragorn calls it an honorable task. She asks to fight by his side. He says he cannot command that. She retorts that he doesn't command the others to stay either. They stay because they love him. Realizing what she just let slip, she holds back and leaves. Warriors are drafted from among Rohan's young and old. Aragorn looks at the men in the armory and laments that they are not soldiers. Legolas takes it a step further, 300 against 10,000. Aragorn argues in Elvish that they have a better chance here than in Edoras. Legolas grimly concludes they are all going to die anyway. Aragorn, losing his temper and snapping back in the common speech, declares he will die as one of them. While Gamling fastens Théoden's armor, the king mutters, "How did it come to this?" as young boys are handed weapons to face fully grown Uruk-hai. At the Ent Moot, Pippin complains they should have decided something by now. Treebeard explains they have just finished saying good morning, even though it's nighttime. Back at the Deep, Aragorn comforts a boy named Haleth, Hama's son, who heard a rumor that no one will survive the night. Aragorn goes to gear up, and Legolas comes to apologize for his despair. Just then, as Gimli struggles with a chainmail shirt that's too long, the sound of the Horn of Rivendell echoes. Haldir leads a force of elves from Lorien into Helm's Deep under orders from Elrond. The men of Rohan man the keep. Aragorn commands the elves on the Deeping Wall. The Uruks approach. The thunder of their march echoes even down in the caves. The Uruks pound their spears against the ground before the wall. One of the older men of Rohan is trembling so hard he accidentally looses an arrow. The battle begins. The elves shoot down waves of orcs, but siege ladders are soon raised against the wall. Gimli and Legolas keep their kill count rivalry going. Legolas leads with 17 to Gimli's 2. Treebeard returns with news. The good news: the Entmoot decided the hobbits are not orcs. The bad news: the Ents are not going to war. It's not their fight. Merry protests, but Treebeard tells him to go back home. Pippin tries to comfort him, but Merry says the fires of Isengard will spread all the way to the Shire. All that was once green and good in this world will be gone. On the wall, the orcs plant their explosives in the culvert. A berserker Uruk charges at the devices with a torch. Aragorn yells for Legolas to take him down, but the elf can't stop him in time. The orc throws himself, dying, onto the bombs, and detonates the lot. The deeping wall is blown wide open. A battering ram strikes the gate of the keep. Gimli leaps down to Aragorn's rescue, and Aragorn orders the reserve elves to charge. Theoden orders a retreat to the keep. Legolas helps Gimli up, but Haldir is struck down. By the time Aragorn reaches him, it's too late. The elven warrior is gone. Aragorn uses a ladder to crash into a squad of Uruks and pull back while Theoden and Gamling run for the gate. An Uruk thrusts a spear through a gap in the doors, wounding Theoden. Gamling drags him to safety. Aragorn and Gimli hold off the invaders, slipping out a side door to face the Uruks head-on the causeway. The jump across the gap to the causeway is too far for Gimli. He tells Aragorn to toss him, but he adds, "Don't tell the elf, not a word," Aragorn replies. As they fight, the people of Rohan brace the gate, but the Uruks set up massive ballistae that fire grappling hooks with giant ladders attached directly into the high wall. Legolas shoots one down, but more keep coming up. Theoden orders the final fall back into the keep. Treebeard carries the hobbits to the western edge of the forest, heading toward the Shire, but Pippin asks to go south. He reasons that they can slip by Saruman unnoticed. In Osgiliath, Faramir's men watch the city burn. Frodo begs to be released, saying the ring only has the power to destroy. Treebeard reaches the southern edge of the forest and sees the devastation caused by Saruman, the felled trees, the scorched earth. He roars, and the Ents emerge behind him, ready for war. The walking trees are sent against the orcs. The Ents march on Isengard. In Osgiliath, the eastern bank has been taken by orcs. Faramir orders Modril to take the hobbits to his father as a mighty gift. Sam explodes. He says Boromir died after trying to take the ring from Frodo, having sworn to protect him. Frodo murmurs that, "They're here," and a Nazgul swoops over the city, shrieking. Faramir pulls the hobbits into hiding. Frodo steps out and walks toward the Nazgul, holding out the ring. Sam grabs him. Faramir shoots the fell beast. The hobbits tumble down the stairs. Frodo points Sting at Sam before recognizing his friend. Exhausted, he admits he can't do it anymore. Sam says it's all wrong. By rights, they shouldn't even be there. He then talks about the great stories, the ones full of danger, where all seemed lost, but they had a happy ending, because the shadow is only a passing thing. And when the sun shines, it will shine out the clearer. Frodo finds his resolve. Faramir approaches, and this time, he understands. He orders them released, even if his life is forfeit. The fleeing orcs from Helm's Deep enter the Horn Forest and are annihilated. Éowyn is overjoyed to see Aragorn alive. Legolas gives his final count, 42. Gimli boasts about sitting on his 43rd. Legolas shoots the Uruk to tie the score. Gimli says it was already dead. Legolas says it was twitching. Gimli replies it's because his axe is embedded in the creature's head. At Helm's Deep, Theoden has lost all hope. Aragorn reminds him of Gandalf's request. Look for him at dawn. He convinces Theoden to ride out, together, to buy time and give the women and children a chance to escape through the caves into the mountains. Gimli sounds the keep's horn. The Rohirrim charge out the gate. The Uruks, confused by the riders, draw back as the White Rider appears atop the hill. Gandalf. Behind him, Éomer and his men. They charge down the slope. The light of dawn blinds the Uruks and the Rohirrim smash through their lines. The Ents attack Isengard. One catches fire, but the Ents break the dam and the river Isen floods everything. The burning Ent is quenched by the rushing waters. Merry and Pippin stand in the flooded circle of Isengard, watching a dumbfounded Saruman survey the destruction of everything he built. Merry compares heights with Pippin to test the effects of the Ent draft. Pippin is starving when he spots a floating apple. He looks up, looks around, and follows the trail of apples to a door in the wall where they find Saruman's storeroom and Longbottom Leaf Pipeweed. Treebeard, whom they keep in the dark about the find, sniffs the smoke. Faramir leads the hobbits and Gollum to the entrance of the sewers that empty at the city's edge. He and Sam exchange compliments before he asks about their route. Frodo says Gollum is leading them up some stairs near Minas Morgul. Faramir grabs Gollum, demanding to know if he means Cirith Ungol. He warns Frodo not to go that way. Gollum insists they must try it to get into Mordor. Faramir lets them go, but holds Gollum back for a moment, warning him not to lead them into peril. In the sewers, Sam tells Gollum that Frodo tried to save him from the Rangers. Gollum says he bears no hard feelings. Sam remarks that it's very decent of him. Gandalf looks toward Mordor and declares that the battle for Helm's Deep is over, but the battle for Middle-earth is about to begin. All hopes now rest on two little hobbits somewhere in the wilderness. In the woods, Sam wonders if Frodo will ever be put into songs and tales. Frodo agrees, but points out that Sam is leaving out one of the chief characters, Samwise the Brave. Sam asks Frodo not to make fun of him, but then he admits he likes the sound of it. They call out to Smeagol, but in his internal torment, he debates killing them. Smeagol, driven back to wickedness, says Sam knows and won't let him take the ring. Then an idea strikes him. Let her do it. Retrieve the ring once they're both dead. He returns to the hobbits with a smile, guiding them toward Mordor as storm clouds gather on the horizon. Two hobbits fish in a tranquil river, Deagol and Smeagol, simple creatures with no idea what destiny has in store for them. Deagol hooks a huge fish that pulls him underwater. At the bottom of the river, something shines. It is the One Ring, lost there since Isildur fell millennia ago. Deagol resurfaces on the bank, hypnotized by the object. Smeagol walks over to check on his friend and lays eyes on the ring over his shoulder. From that second on, everything changes. Smeagol asks for the ring as a birthday present. Deagol refuses. The two fight. Deagol tries to strangle Smeagol, who bites his friend, tackles him, and chokes him until the life leaves his body. He takes the ring, slips it onto his finger, vanishes. Smeagol is banished from his community. He lives alone eating raw fish, slowly wasting away, his body twisting into something that barely resembles what he once was, until he burrows deep into the caves beneath the misty mountains. And there, Gollum is born. Back in the present, Frodo is hiding in a ditch, stroking the ring, when he hears Gollum approaching and quickly stashes it away. Gollum wakes Sam and tells them to get moving. Sam thinks he overslept, but Frodo explains that the black clouds are making the days darker and darker. The ground shakes. Sam hands Frodo a piece of Lemba's bread and mentions he rationed the food for the journey back. Gollum guides them toward the crossroads. Meanwhile, Gandalf leads Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, Théoden, and Éomer through Fangorn Forest to the ruins of Isengard. And who do they find sitting on the rubble, smoking pipeweed as if they were on a picnic? Merry and Pippin. Treebeard informs them that Saruman is locked in the tower. Gandalf wants to interrogate him. Saruman appears at the top of Orthanc. He tries to convince Théoden to make peace. He's not buying it, so he shifts strategy and provokes Gandalf, who keeps his cool and demands information about Sauron's plans. Saruman produces the Palantir and blurts out that Sauron will strike soon, that Aragorn will never be crowned, and that Frodo was sent to his death. Gimli wants the wizard dead right then and there, but Gandalf holds him back. He offers Saruman a chance to come down and be spared. Saruman's response is a fireball aimed straight at Gandalf's chest. It does nothing. Gandalf shatters Saruman's staff with sheer magic.
Your staff is broken.
Grima Wormtongue appears beside the wizard. Théoden tries to convince him to redeem himself. Saruman mocks the House of Rohan, and Grima seethes with rage. Saruman slaps him, and just when it seems Grima will cower, he springs up and stabs Saruman in the back. Legolas shoots Grima with an arrow, but Saruman is already plummeting onto one of Isengard's spiked water wheels. The Palantir falls into the water. Pippin picks it up. Gandalf snatches it from him immediately. In Edo Raz, the Rohirrim mourn their dead and celebrate their victory. Gimli and Legolas get into a drinking contest. Éowyn keeps her eyes on Aragorn. Théoden doubts his own capabilities as a leader. Legolas wins the contest without even breaking a sweat. Pippin and Merry sing a song from the Green Dragon, but the young hobbit shoots Gandalf a strange look. The wizard is worried about Frodo. Aragorn tries to encourage him. In the middle of the night, while Frodo, Sam, and Gollum are sleeping, Gollum talks to himself, muttering about a plan to kill the hobbits. He wakes up and talks to his own reflection in a pool. When he mentions her, the one who lives in the tunnel above the stairs, he grows increasingly frantic at the idea of taking the ring. Sam overhears, walks up, and slaps him. Frodo separates the two and insists they need Gollum as a guide. Back in Edoras, Aragorn can't sleep. Passing through the hall, he sees Éowyn asleep and covers her. She wakes up and tells him about a dream of a giant wave destroying everything. He reassures her. Outside, Legolas stands staring at the horizon, sensing that the eye of the enemy is moving. Pippin, also awake, approaches Gandalf, who is sleeping with his eyes open. He wants to see the Palantir one more time. He swaps the stone for a pitcher in Gandalf's arms and grabs the sphere. The Eye of Sauron manifests, terrifying Pippin, who falls to the floor convulsing. Gandalf wakes up. Aragorn and Legolas burst into the room. Aragorn touches the palantir and passes out. Gandalf covers the stone and revives Pippin. When the hobbit says he saw a city in flames and a dead white tree, Gandalf understands. He saw Minas Tirith and the burning question. What did he tell Sauron about Frodo and the ring? The next day, Gandalf explains to Théoden that Pippin didn't reveal anything to Sauron, but inadvertently, he caught a glimpse of the enemy's plans. Defeated at Helm's Deep and knowing that Elendil's heir has emerged, Sauron intends to raise Minas Tirith before a king can unite it against him. Gandalf says that if the beacons of Gondor are lit, Rohan must be ready for war. Théoden hesitates. Why help Gondor when Gondor didn't help Rohan? Aragorn wants to go, but Gandalf tells him to follow the river and watch for the black ships. Gandalf is going to ride for Minas Tirith and is taking Pippin with him. Merry is upset by his friend's foolhardy curiosity, and as a parting gift, hands him the last of his pipeweed. Pippin only realizes Merry isn't coming along when Shadowfax is already galloping away. From high on a parapet, Merry watches the two disappear down the road. Aragorn finds him there, and Merry laments that now his friend is gone, just like Frodo and Sam. Aragorn says that hobbits are remarkably resilient. Merry laughs, noting that Pippin is more foolish than resilient. On a distant path, Arwen is riding toward the Grey Havens when she has a vision. Her son with Aragorn, wearing the Avenstar. She stops, turns her horse around. She rides back to Rivendell and confronts Elrond, who had already seen that future through the gift of foresight. He tells her that the future is all but lost. She insists that if she abandons Aragorn now, she will regret it forever, and declares it is time to reforge Narsil. Arwen collapses. Elrond touches her hands and realizes the elven life is leaving her. She is dying. He yields and orders the sword to be reforged. Crossing the Mering Stream, Gandalf takes Pippin into the realm of Gondor. The majestic sight of Minas Tirith rises before them. They ride to the very top, where they see the white tree of Gondor. Gandalf explains that Denethor is not a king, just a steward looking after the throne in the absence of one. He warns Pippin, do not mention Boromir's death, or Frodo, or the ring, or Aragorn. In fact, it's best not to speak at all. Denethor holds Boromir's cloven horn, shattered by the news. Pippin reveals that Boromir died to save him and offers his services in payment of that debt. Denethor refuses to call upon Théoden. He knows of Aragorn, and he will not bow to a ranger from the north. As Gandalf leaves, he mutters that Denethor uses even his grief as a cloak. Pippin looks out across the plain toward Mordor, where black clouds are gathering. Gandalf explains it's no ordinary storm. It's a device of Sauron's, crafted to ease the march of his orc armies. Pippin wants to leave. Gandalf says there is no leaving the city. At the crossroads, Sam laments the lack of tea time but tries to cheer up Frodo, who no longer believes he'll make it back. Sam insists. There and back again, just like Mr. Bilbo. They pass the decapitated statue of an ancient king of Gondor, its head replaced by a stone shaped like the eye. But as they pass the fallen stone head on the ground, the sun pierces the clouds and illuminates its face. The king wears a crown again, a fleeting second of hope before the clouds roll back in. At night in Minas Tirith, Gandalf smokes while Pippin examines his new Citadel Guard uniform. Pippin asks if there is any hope for Frodo and Sam. Gandalf replies that there never was much more than a fool's hope. He explains that Sauron has massed all his forces, orcs, legions of Haradrim, corsairs of Umbar. If the garrison at Osgiliath falls, the city's last defense is gone. And to make matters worse, Sauron is sending the Witch King of Angmar to lead his armies. It is said that no living man can kill him. At that very moment, Gollum leads Frodo and Sam up until they sight Minas Morgul, the lair of the Witch King. As he guides them toward the secret stairs, Frodo is pulled toward the city's bridge as if hypnotized. They hold him back. A blast of blinding green light erupts from the top of the fortress, visible all the way from Gondor. The Witch King emerges mounted on a fell beast and summons his army. Gandalf watches from afar. The great battle has begun. The next morning, Gandalf sends Pippin to light the beacon of Minas Tirith. The hobbit climbs to the pinnacle and sets the pyre ablaze. The next beacon responds. One by one, the beacons flare across the mountains until the last one shines in sight of Edoras. Aragorn rushes to Théoden. The king finally agrees to answer Gondor's call. In Osgiliath, Faramir discovers too late that the orcs are crossing the river in boats under the cover of fog. They fight, but the orcs build a pontoon bridge and swarm across in mass. The Nazgul appear. Modril is struck down and killed by Gothmog, who declares that the age of men is over. Gandalf, with Pippin, arrives just in time to repel the fell beasts with a blinding light. Back in Minas Tirith, Faramir reveals to Gandalf that he sent Frodo and Sam away 2 days ago. Gandalf's joy freezes when he discovers they took the pass of Cirith Ungol. Denethor, meanwhile, viciously scolds Faramir for sending the ring to Mordor. He claims Boromir would have brought it to him. Faramir counters that Boromir would have kept the ring for himself. Denethor explodes. As Faramir steps forward to comfort him, his father seems to see Boromir for a split second. The illusion fades, and he orders Faramir away. On the winding stairs of Cirith Ungol, Gollum plants the seed of discord. He whispers to Frodo that Sam wants the ring. The Witch King orders Gothmog to unleash all the legions, not to stop until the city is taken and everyone is dead.
Do not stop the attack until the city is taken. Slay them all.
Inside Minas Tirith, Pippin is sworn in as a guard of the citadel. Faramir congratulates him and reveals that the uniform was his when he was a boy, though it never quite fit him. Boromir was always the true soldier. Denethor orders Faramir to retake Osgiliath. Faramir knows it's a suicide mission. He realizes his father wishes he had died in Boromir's place. Even so, he says he will do what he can in his brother's name. On the mountain high above Minas Morgul, Gollum feigns sleep and waits for Sam to doze off. He takes the lembas bread, sprinkles crumbs over Sam, and tosses the rest off the cliff. Sam wakes up and accuses Gollum. Gollum brushes the crumbs off Sam's cloak, accusing him of eating it all in secret. Sam lunges at him. Frodo breaks them apart, nearly passing out. Sam offers to help, offering to carry the ring for a while. Frodo, now fully convinced that Sam wants the ring for himself, tells Sam to go home, and he presses on with Gollum. Faramir leads his men down the hill on a suicide mission. The crowds watch in absolute silence. Gandalf begs him not to throw his life away. Faramir refuses to disobey his father. Denethor demands that Pippin sing. The Hobbit sings Edge of Night, as Faramir's men are relentlessly slaughtered by volleys of orc arrows in Osgiliath. At Dunharrow, Theoden inspects the mustered troops. 6,000 spears, less than half of what he'd hoped for. Aragorn says they must leave at dawn or Gondor will fall before they arrive. The men and horses fear the creeping shadow of the mountain, especially a dark road leading out of the encampment. Legolas recognizes it. It is the Dimholt Road, the door under the mountain. That night, as a cloaked rider makes his way up the road, Aragorn dreams of Arwen and sees the Evenstar falling and shattering into pieces. He wakes up and is escorted to Theoden, who leaves him alone with the hooded figure. It's Elrond. Elrond reveals that Arwen is dying. Her fate is now entirely tied to the ring. He warns of Corsair ships that will reach the city in 2 days. Aragorn needs more men. Elrond points to those who dwell in the mountain. Aragorn argues that they answer to no one. Elrond draws Anduril, forged from the shards of Narsil. With this sword, he can summon a deadly army. Elrond commands him, "Become the king you were born to be." Aragorn saddles Brago. Éowyn appears, protesting his departure. He tells her she only loves a shadow of him and that he cannot return her feelings. He rides out. Gimli and Legolas go with him. Gamling declares they are fleeing because they are too few. Theoden replies that they cannot win, but they will meet them in battle nonetheless. In the morning, he orders Éowyn to ride back and take his place in Edo Raz, asking her not to mourn those whose time has come. On the Pass of the Dead, thick mist, spectral hands, piles of skulls. Aragorn reaches the open cavern where the King of the Dead appears as a phantom. Aragorn commands them to fulfill their oath. The king sneers that only the King of Gondor may command him. He lunges at Aragorn, who parries his strike with Anduril. The king is stunned. That line was broken. Aragorn, it has been remade. He tries to convince them to fight in exchange for their release. The dead vanish. The cavern begins to collapse. Aragorn and the others escape out the side of the mountain and spot the Corsair ships. The despair lasts only a second. The King of the Dead phases in behind them. He accepts the terms. Faramir's body is dragged back into Minas Tirith. Pippin shouts that he is still alive and needs a healer. Denethor looks out over the wall and sees the colossal army, descending into sheer madness. He cries that Rohan has deserted them and orders everyone to flee for their lives. Gandalf knocks him out with his staff and takes command of the defense. The orcs catapult the severed heads of the fallen at Osgiliath over the walls. Gandalf orders the trebuchets to fire. The Nazgul swoop in and destroy the machines. Siege towers advance. A battering ram is brought against the gates. Gandalf saves Pippin from an orc ambush, and Pippin runs his blade through an orc about to strike Gandalf. but a standard ram is useless against the massive gates. Gothmog orders them to bring up Grond, a colossal wolf-headed battering ram pulled by great beasts. At the Corsair ships, Aragorn shouts that they may go no further. Legolas knocks a warning shot, but Gimli bumps his bow, causing him to accidentally shoot the bosun. Gimli tells them to prepare to be boarded. The pirate captain laughs. "By you and what army?" The army of the dead surges through.
This army.
Gollum leads Frodo into the tunnel of Torek Ungol. Smeagol vanishes into the pitch black. Frodo sees giant spider webs, carcasses, and orc skeletons. Sam, further down the stairs, finds the discarded Lemba's bread. Frodo stumbles into the webs and remembers the Phial of Galadriel. The pure light attracts Shelob, a massive, ancient spider. Frodo runs, gets violently tangled in a web, and Gollum appears on the other side, taunting him. Frodo uses Sting to cut himself free and escapes, but the sword is left behind. Outside the cave, Gollum attacks Frodo. Frodo overpowers him and says he must destroy the ring for the sake of both of them. Smeagol goes feral, lunging at him, but Frodo shoves him over the edge of a chasm. Frodo collapses but has a vision of Lothlorien and pushes himself back up. The Rohirrim regroup at the foot of the White Mountains. Éowyn tells Merry to take courage before they ride to their doom. He tells her she has so much to live for. His thoughts drift to Frodo, Sam, and Pippin. At night, Grond hammers against the gates. Denethor takes Faramir to Rathdynan, ordering that they be burned together. Gandalf arrives just in time. Denethor lights the pyre. Gandalf knocks him off it. Pippin heroically shoves Faramir to safety. Denethor leaps at Pippin, but Shadowfax rears up and kicks him back into the flames. Denethor sees Faramir stir a second before running out, fully ablaze, and throwing himself off the prow of the city. Grond breaches the main gate. 4 heavily armored Olog High Trolls charge through. Gandalf brings one down. Meanwhile, Shelob ambushes Frodo from behind, driving her stinger into him. She begins wrapping him in thick webs. Sam suddenly appears wielding Sting and the Phial. He fights the giant spider, gouges out one of her eyes, takes a brutal hit, and is nearly skewered by her stinger, but he grips Sting and drives it deep into her underbelly. Shelob recoils in agony. Sam drives her back into her lair with the Phial. Frodo appears completely dead. Sam weeps over his friend. Suddenly, Sting glows blue. Orcs from Cirith Ungol approach. The leader, Gorbag, reveals that Frodo isn't dead, just paralyzed by the venom. They haul his body away to the tower. Pippin finds Gandalf in the midst of a retreat. He tells him of Denethor's madness. Gandalf rides for the citadel when the Witch King appears, shattering Gandalf's staff and knocking him to the ground. He tells him he has failed. At that very moment, the sound of a horn echoes in the distance. The Witch King pulls away. The Rohirrim appear on the horizon at dawn. Theoden surveys the immense forces of Mordor. He organizes the line. Éomer on the left, Gamling in the center, Grimbold on the right against the wall. He delivers a blood-pumping speech and orders the charge. Crying, "Death!" 6,000 riders surge forward and plow into the orcs. As Denethor drenches himself and Faramir in oil, Gandalf arrives. Denethor ignites the fire. Gandalf strikes him back, and Pippin drags Faramir away. Shadowfax rears up, kicking Denethor onto the pyre. Through the consuming flames, he sees Faramir stirred. Panicking, Denethor flees and hurls himself from the burning city. On the battlefield, the Rohirrim are driving back the orcs when the Haradrim arrive with their Mumakil. Theoden orders an attack, but the riders stand little chance against the giant elephants. Éomer brings down 2 with a single spear throw. Éowyn and Merry slice through a Mumak's legs. It topples, nearly crushing them. Éowyn is thrown from her horse. Theoden is struck down when the Witch King's fell beast attacks Snowmane, crushing the king beneath his mount. Éowyn steps between them. She severs the beast's head. The Witch King rises, wielding a heavy mace, and shatters her shield and her arm. At the Harland, the Corsair ships arrive. Aragorn leaps ashore with Gimli and Legolas. The army of the dead follows them. The Witch King lifts Éowyn by the throat, boasting that no man can kill him. Merry drives his blade into the back of his knee. The Witch King drops to his knees. Merry's blade dissolves. Éowyn removes her helm, declares "I am no man," and thrusts her sword into his faceless void. The Witch King is destroyed. Legolas scales a Mumak, takes out the Haradrim on top. fires 3 arrows into the beast's head, and surfs down its trunk as it collapses. Gimli quips, "That still only counts as 1. The army of the dead sweeps the battlefield clean. Eowyn rushes to the side of the dying Theoden. He tells her he goes to his father's, in whose mighty company he shall not now feel ashamed. Aragorn declares the dead's oath fulfilled, and the spirits fade away. Pippin spots Merry's elven cloak in the rubble. Eomer discovers his sister lying on the battlefield. Aragorn takes her to the houses of healing, where she meets Faramir, who is also recovering there. Pippin finds Merry, wounded and trapped beneath a fallen foe. In the tower of Cirith Ungol, Frodo awakens as the orcs brawl over his mithril shirt. Shagrat kills Gorbag. The factions wipe each other out. Sam arrives to find nearly everyone dead. He faces down 3 orcs and dispatches them. Reaching the top of the tower, he stabs Gorbag in the back before he can kill Frodo. Frodo despairs, thinking the quest is over and the ring is taken. Sam reveals he took the ring when he thought Frodo was dead. He hesitates for a moment, but hands it back. Disguised in orc armor, they cross the bridge over the Morgai Valley and look out across Mordor. Thousands of orcs are encamped below. Frodo says they will never make it through unnoticed. Sam tells him they'd better start walking. Gandalf tells Aragorn that 10,000 orcs stand between Frodo and Mount Doom. Aragorn proposes marching on the Black Gate as a diversion to draw Sauron's eye upon them and give Frodo a fighting chance. Eomer states they cannot win. Aragorn knows this, but they can give Frodo that chance. Aragorn confronts Sauron through the Palantir, revealing Anduril. Sauron retaliates with a vision of Arwen dying. The Evenstar pendant falls and shatters on the floor. Aragorn leads his men out the gates. Standing by the window, Eowyn says it is cold. Faramir replies that it is merely the rain of the first spring, and that the darkness will not endure. They clasp hands. Frodo and Sam are intercepted by a column of orcs and forced to march with them. When they halt for an inspection, Sam picks a fight, sparking chaos, and the two slip away. They traverse the plains of Gorgoroth. Sam discards everything they can spare: armor, pots, any dead weight. At night, he sees a star piercing through the clouds of Mordor. He points it out to Frodo, saying there is beauty up there that no shadow can touch. But Frodo has already fallen asleep. Before the Black Gate, the mouth of Sauron presents Frodo's mithril shirt as proof of his death. Aragorn decapitates him. This successfully draws the eye of Sauron back to the gate. The orc armies emerge and encircle Aragorn's forces. On the slopes of Mount Doom, Sam cradles Frodo in his arms. He tries to remind him of the Shire. Frodo can't remember it. The only image left in his mind is the eye. Sam tells him they are going to be rid of it once and for all. He says he can't carry the ring for him, but he can carry Frodo. He hoists his friend onto his shoulders and begins the final ascent. At the Black Gate, Aragorn stares up at the eye. He turns back to his companions. "For Frodo," he says, and charges. The hobbits follow. Then, the entire army surges forward. Sam carries Frodo to the entrance, just as Gollum reappears and attacks Frodo. Frodo reminds him of his oath. Smeagol promised. Gollum snaps back. Smeagol lied. Sam fends him off. Frodo sprints into the heart of Mount Doom. Outside, the Eagles arrive to battle the Nazgul. Within the crack of doom, Sam catches up to Frodo at the edge of the precipice. He urges him to destroy the ring. Frodo holds the ring out over the fiery chasm. He stares at it. The ring's voice echoes in his mind. He turns to Sam and declares, "The ring is mine!" He slips it onto his finger. The eye of Sauron snaps toward Mount Doom. The Nazgul break off and fly back. Gollum knocks Sam out and tracks Frodo's footprints in the ash. He leaps onto the invisible Frodo, biting off his finger. Gollum stands in awe, admiring his precious. As a bleeding Frodo staggers to his feet, the two wrestle at the edge. Gollum falls, taking the ring into the lava. He clutches it tightly as he sinks, leaving the ring floating briefly on the incandescent surface. Sam rushes to the ledge. Frodo is dangling over the drop. Down below, the fiery letters on the ring glow, as if calling Frodo to join it. Sam reaches down. Frodo can't reach him. Sam begs him not to let go. Frodo tries one last time and grabs Sam's hand. Below, the ring melts away in the fire. The eye of Sauron dilates. A deafening shriek tears through the sky as Barad-dûr collapses. The very ground of Mordor splinters, swallowing the orc armies. Merry cheers, but then Mount Doom erupts. Sam guides Frodo to an outcropping of rock that quickly becomes an island in a sea of lava. Frodo is finally himself again. He can recall the Shire. Sam talks of Rosy Cotton. Frodo embraces him, saying he is glad to be with him, here at the end of all things. The Eagles arrive, carrying Gandalf, and rescue them both. Later, Frodo wakes up in a bed in the Houses of Healing. He sees Gandalf, whom he thought dead. They share a joyous laugh. Merry and Pippin burst in, followed by Legolas, Gimli, and Aragorn. Finally, Sam appears in the doorway. The two two exchange a silent, knowing look that says everything. In the Citadel courtyard, Gandalf crowns Aragorn. The new king recites the oath of Elendil. He greets Legolas, then spots Elrond's banner. Stepping out from behind it is Arwen, alive and well. They kiss. Aragorn and Arwen approach the four hobbits, who begin to bow. Aragorn stops them. "My friends, you bow to no one." He and Arwen kneel before them. Seeing this, the entire gathered host of Gondor bows in deep reverence. The Fourth Age begins. The four hobbits return to the Shire. They share a quiet drink at the Green Dragon Inn. Sam spots Rosie across the room. Finding his courage at last, he goes over to speak with her. Months later, they are married. At Bag End, Frodo is finishing the book. He rubs his shoulder, wincing in pain. It has been 4 years since Weathertop, and the wound has never truly healed. The Red Book now contains Bilbo's tale, There and Back Again, as well as Frodo's The Lord of the Rings. But there is still room for a little more. Gandalf drives a pony cart through the woods. Frodo and an elderly Bilbo are in the back, while Merry, Pippin, and Sam ride alongside them. Bilbo has forgotten where they are going. Frodo gently reminds him, the Grey Havens, where the elves have granted Bilbo the special honor of taking the last ship to Valinor. Bilbo absent-mindedly asks if he might hold the ring one last time. Frodo softly tells him he lost it. Arriving at the Havens, Bilbo sees the sea for the first time. He greets Galadriel, Elrond, Celeborn, and Círdan. Galadriel proclaims that the power of the Three Rings has ended, and the time of the dominion of men has begun. Bilbo bids them farewell, declaring he is quite ready for another adventure. Gandalf bids farewell to the hobbits, telling them that his work is now finished. He turns to Frodo and says it is time. Frodo explains to a heartbroken Sam that they set out to save the Shire, and it has been saved, but not for him. He entrusts the final pages of the Red Book to Sam. He embraces Merry and Pippin, and finally, he holds Sam in an embrace that carries the heavy weight of everything they have endured together. Frodo boards the ship, and it slowly sails out to sea, bound for Valinor. Sam returns home. Rosie and his children greet him at the door. He looks inside, takes a deep breath, and says, "Well, I'm back." He steps inside and closes the door.